Okay. So once again, good morning to all of you. In today's class, we are going to see the concept of constructors. Constructors. Okay. Before going to see the concept of constructor, let me explain what is the need of constructors. For example, I'm going to write one class called class CSC, and in this class I am going to assign two variables int a comma b, and I have taken some variable float c. Float c, and I am going to write some method called assign method, right? Whenever I'm writing this one means it's a kind of business class. Business class. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to assign some values a equal to 5, b equal to 6. As c is a float, I'm going to write like some value 7.2, 7.2, and I have written like this. Okay, fine. Next I'm going to write one execution class, class execution class. Here, if I want to, access this assign method, first I need to create an object, right? So before going to create an object, first I need to call program driver string aux. Then I'm going to create an object csc c equal to new csc. Guys, be careful and observe everything here. I have created an object. Once I have created an object, first step is what will happen? All data members are instantiated for that class. All data members are instantiated for that class or not? Yes. Once I have used the keyword called new, memory is created for all those data members for that corresponding class. So in the first step, it is going to create memory. It is going to create memory for A, B, and C. And then it is going to place what? Default values 0, 0, 0. How you are getting it is 0.0 as it is a float, right? Yes. So how we are getting, for example, I have written something like a display method here. Let's assume that display method, and I am not returning anything. If I am trying to print SOP of A, B, and C, what will happen? You can observe the answer as 0, 0, 0.0. 0, 0, 0.0. So this itself meaning that without calling the assign method, if memory is instantiated, the default values are integers for 0, for float values it is 0.00. Okay, fine. Once I instantiate, like this happen. Now if I call c dot assign, what will happen? The assign method is called, and every local variable like a equal to 5 is modified here. A equal to 5, b equal to 6, c equal to 7.2. Then if I call c dot display, I mean before this, if I call like c dot display, I will get 0, 0, 0.0. Here I will get 5, 6, 7.2. Yes. This is what happening in our previous classes. So this is an execution class. Now kindly observe here what is happening here. Whenever I have created a class, whenever I have created an object, then memory is created for that object, memory is created for that class, yes. Then it is going to place default values. After that, whenever you call a function or a method, it is going to place user defined values. Assume that to make this process it is taking x seconds, and to make this process assume that it is taking y seconds. Okay, so instead of placing like the total time it is going to take as x plus y seconds. X plus y seconds. I mean, here the question is there any particular procedure? Is there any particular procedure which will take less than x plus y seconds? Then we'll go for the concept of constructors. We'll go for the concept of constructors. Why? Why? Where it is taking more time? So instead of doing like this, like memory creation and placing default values and then placing user defined values, instead of placing like this, why can't I go for directly create a memory, and why can't I place directly user defined values instead of placing default values, so that I will reduce my time, then I will go for constructors. I will go for constructors. Okay, so the definition of constructor is, I mean, so when we go for constructor means it is used to place place program defined values instead of placing placing default values when an object is created. I mean, అదే కదా మనం చెప్పింది ఇక్కడ. When an object is created we are going to first place default values, then we are going to make our user defined values. So what I am saying, constructors, when we need constructors to place program defined values directly without placing default values when the object is created. I mean, simply a constructor is a what we can call, it is also a kind of a special method. Constructor is also a special method, meaning that it is similar to method only, but some rules will modify, but some rules are modified. The syntax, everything is same. Okay, so the need of constructor is to place our own values instead of placing default values. Okay, what is syntax of constructor? What is structure of constructor? So first important point, right? You know how we are going to create a method having some access specifier, return type, and then method name, followed by parameters may or may not accept parameters, and we are going to do this process, right or not? Yes. Similarly, it is also a special method. It is also special method, but it will follow some rules. Among those, first one is constructor name is similar to class name. Constructor name is similar to class name. I mean, for example, I am taking some class called CSC, If I want to create a constructor, then we are going to simply use like this. In that, whatever the class name is there, that class name I am going to use as constructor name. Okay, and this constructor will be called whenever an object is created. Am I right or not? Here, see, this method is called whenever it is called with respect to that object. We call with respect to that object. Similarly, whenever an object is created for this class, CSC C equal to new CSC. Automatically will be called. Okay, and the constructor won't return any data type, including void also. If you are writing like void void CSC, it will treat it as a method. It will treat it as method, meaning that constructor should not return any value. I mean any data type, including void also. These are the some of the rules, and we'll see some of the rules once we'll move on to the further. We will move further. Okay, now please remember this. Let me explain with an example. I have created a class called ECE. ECE. Okay, I have created one class. This is a assume that this is a business class, and this is an execution class. Execution class, and here execution class I am calling it as like EC only. Public static void main of string aux. String aux. Okay. Now for example, I have values like int a comma b comma b float float f float f. In the starting of the class, what I did, I have declared the same syntax, and I have given a method called assign method. Because of writing this assign method, I have to call it explicitly. Even though I have created an object. Now let's see in the case of constructors. So how you are going to create constructor? You are going to create constructor with respect to class name only. Constructor. I am going to write a equal to 5, b equal to 6. Uh, Something here I have written like f equal to 7.2. F equal to 7.2. Now no memory created for this one. Now once I have started creating an object ECE equal to new ECE new ECE, what will happen is, generally whenever an object is created, JVM will involve that JVM will automatically call constructor. JVM will automatically call its corresponding constructor. What is the corresponding constructor? ECE. Meaning that once you create an object, memory will be instantiated ABF, and in the previous process it is going to place default values. As we are using constructor, it won't place default values. Instead of that, it is going to place programmer defined values, that is directly 5, 6 and 7.2. 5, 6 and 7.2. Okay, so that is the use of constructors. I mean, it is not only with respect to this use. I mean, for example now I have created one more object ECE E1 equal to new ECE. Now what will happen? Once again, for even object, once again memory created for A, B and F, it is going to place what values? Programmer defined values only. Meaning that for each and every object, construct will be called. The corresponding construct will be called. Okay, fine. So here, this constructor can accept parameters, or it may not accept parameter. The example I have given as it is not accepting any parameters. Okay, if I write void, it will. If I write void, it is not a constructor. It is simply a method. Okay, na? Yes. Now see here, one more rule I am adding. So it is not returning anything. So it won't support. It can support. Uh, various kind of access modifiers. I mean, access modifiers are like public, protected, default, and private. Okay, guys, first before going to explain this statement, let me go for execution so that you will get clarity. Okay, let me take some code here. I'm going to write like class class business class BC I am writing. Okay. Mm, int a comma b and float f. Float f. I am taking some method for time for purpose a equal to 5, b equal to 6, a equal to 5, b equal to 6, f equal to some 7.2. 1.2. I'm going to execute. Okay. Now, I'm writing void display, void display of println of abf, println of a, sorry, a, b, and f. I'm trying to print all the values. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to create constructor here. I mean, instead of constructor, I'm going to create. So first నేను assign ని call చేయాలన్నా display call చేయాలన్నా I need to create object, right? bc b equal to new bc, bc b equal to new bc. Okay. Now I have created an object. So with respect to this object, I can call b dot display, b dot display. Now what is the answer you will get? You will get the answer as 0 0 0.0. See, why 0 0 0.0? Meaning that once we create an object, all the data members of the class will be instantiated and places its own values. Place its own values. Okay, that is the reason it is going to get zeros. One error. What is that? Yes, I will define it as yes. Okay, now see what happened. 0 0 0.0. Here I am taking some hyphen mark instead of getting confused. Okay, now 0 0 0.0 we got. Now with this statement you can understood that here whenever an object is created, it is going to place its own values. It is going to place its own values. Then whenever the corresponding method is called, then only the compiler is going to place use programmer defined values. For that I'm writing once again display method. Okay. Yes. See 567.2. Okay. Now in this process, what happened is first it is going to place the compiler is going to place its own values. Then the program different values it is going to place. Instead of that, I don't want like that. I want to place directly. I want to place directly programmer defined values. Programmer defined value. So for that, we'll go for a constructors concept. Okay, na? So constructor and tell us constructor you are going to create with respect to directly class name BC, and it is not going to return anything. Okay, now what I'm going to do? A equal to 5 and B equal to 6. All this I'm going to place. Yes, I have placed it. Now observe. I am going to execute. Is there an assign method? No assign method. No assign method. And display is one time itself is enough. One time itself. Okay. If I try to execute, let's see. Right? What happened here? Directly, I mean, with this statement, you can understood that here you are getting only directly 567.2. 567.2. Why? Because whenever you create an object, automatically that corresponding constructor will be executed and place its own values. Places programmer defined values. Then if I try to display all those values, you are going to get. Okay, now fine. So now I am going to change the definition. Hmm. See, we can use this constructor concept. You can use this constructor concept like whenever an object is created, whenever an object is created, immediately, if you want to make, if you want to make some kind of operation, then you can use the concept of constructors. You can use the concept of constructor. Like, see, it's not only all about like placing these values. For example, for example, uh, instead of like this, I want to print something. Uh, like constructor created. Instead of placing all these, I'm going to just remove. I'm saying that once, so for your understanding, I'm saying that once an object is created, automatically this statement has to execute. See, it is going to execute. You got the answer right? This means once an object is created, automatically the constructor will be called. Now once again I'm writing BC B1 equal to new BC. New BC. Now tell me the answer. What is the answer you will get? New BC. How many times? How many times constructor created will be get? You are going to get 3 times. Yes, meaning that for every object creation, I am going to execute. I mean, JVM is going to execute its own default constructor. Its own default constructor. Yes, fine. So up to here understood. Now what I'm saying is uh, every method is having some kind of access specifier, access modifier. Similarly, constructor is also having access modifier, public, private, default, and public, protected, default, and private. Okay, fine. Now what we are going to do is, you know the meaning of private. Meaning of private. Once I am places some kind of access modifier as private, where you can access that element. That element means it can be a variable or a member or method or anything. If I am going to place some kind of private here, you can access that only within the class. You can access that only within the class. Now see here, observe. If I'm writing like this, class CSC, I'm going to create a constructor. Going to create a constructor. I have written something like private. I written something like private. Now tell me, if I want to create an object of this one, if I want to create an object of this one, CSC, is it possible? It is not possible to create an object for this one. Why? Because see, let's see an example. Before that, I'm going to make here private. Particulate as private, and I am trying to create an object for that. What I did, I made it as private, and I'm going to create an object. What will happen? You will get an error. Why you are getting error? Because you mention it as private. BC has private access in BC only, meaning that as you mentioned it as BC, I mean private, it has to access only within this one. You have to create an object only within the class, but you cannot access outside the class. Outside the class. So creating an object for a private constructor outside the class is invalid. Invalid. Meaning that if the constructor access modifier is private, then the object of the corresponding class will be created within the class only, and you cannot able to create the object of the class outside of the class. Outside of class. Okay. So with the help of private constructors, we can able to implement singleton classes. We can able to implement singleton classes. What do you mean by singleton classes? Singleton classes means these classes having only one object at a time. These classes having only one object at a time. For like in the previous program, I have done. Okay. You observe here. For a single class ECE, I have created how many objects? Two objects. But coming to the singleton classes, at a time only one object will be alive. Only one object will be alive. Meaning that if you want to restrict a particular class with only one object, then we will go for singleton class. That you can achieve through the concept of private constructors. Let's see an example for private constructors. See, guys, you need to respond. Please unmute yourself and answer. What is our definition of singleton class? Assume that I am defining it as singleton class. So the definition of singleton class is I can able to create only one object for the class. Only one object will be available at a time. One object will be available at a time. Okay, fine. Now if I write like this, what happened? I have created an object. So this is an invalid. So there is no possibility. As I have written it as private constructor, it is not possible to create object directly. Then what is another way? The another way is I can access through its class. I can access it through class. See, here I am going to write some method. That method I am calling it as m method. I am making it as public m. This is I am writing something like m method called. Now please respond. Is m method can I call with respect to program driver? Is it possible? No.
Yes, sir.
Yes. How? As it is an instant method, if you want to call this instant method, I need to create an object in this class. But creating an object itself is a wrong here, as it is a private constructor. So it is not possible to call this method directly because it is instant method. So instead of that, what I will do is I will make it as static. Once I make it as static, can I call it or not? Yes, I can directly call like bc dot. Yeah. It's not here. Now check. What happened? Invalid method declaration. Invalid method declaration. Return type required. Yes. Its return type is assume. I am writing like it is not returning anything, right? I am going to make as void. Yes. Java space E23. Yes. M method call. Meaning that have I created any object here? No. But here I want to show I have to create only one method, one object. See, what I will do is I'm going to take one string yes, public string yes, and in this method I'm going to create an object of the same class. That object I'm going to make outside first. First, let me write. I'm going to create an object bc b equal to new bc. Bc b equal to new bc. I create an object. If I want to get this b object, outside the class, I can access with respect to method m, But here, if I write like this, is it possible or not? B1 equal to new BC. Yes, it is available. It is correct, but I don't want like this. Then I will go for creating the object reference outside the class, which is I am making it as a public static BC, that I am initially making it as null. So the meaning of this one is I don't have any objects right now. This is only object reference mark. Now, once m method executed, how many references are there? How many objects available? Only one object available. Only one object is available. Yes, right? Yes. Then I'm going to make return. If I'm returning B is what? B is object of what? BC class. So I need to return data type as BC. As it is returning something, what I need to do? I need to take that, like I want to make to show here. Like as it is returning the object of BC, here also you need to make it as typecast, right? BC, something like first object or A, BC dot M. Then I want to show the thing here is I want to show something like only one object is created. That is what I want to show. So for that I will print some address bc dot once again I will call m. Even though you are calling how many times, it is going to produce same result only. Bc dot. Okay, fine. Here instead of this, I'm going to write s equal to CSC. S equal to CSC, meaning that for all the strings you will get the answer only yes. Let me write system dot out dot println of A. I'm writing like address. Address is plus A. See, what is the answer you are expecting? What is the answer you will get? I will get same address for everything because as I have restricted to create the object for this, because as I mentioned it as a static, it means that I am not going to create the object for multiple times. Okay, what it is getting showing. Okay, this P is small ma. Yes, Java space P. P. What happened? Address is changing. This address is changing and this address is changing. Everything is changing. But I need to show that object need to create only one time. 1 minute. Let me check. Uh, where is the problem? I have called the one of the static method, and in that static method I am going to call one constructor, call the constructor. For that it has created one reference. That reference it is going to return, and once again it has created the constructor. It has called one more method m, and it's okay, fine. Here, what I need to do is I need to restrict, right? Here I am getting it as different addresses, but my requirement is I want to create only one address. So when you are going to create a new object, you are going to create a new object whenever it is the object address is null. Whenever the object address is null, then only I will create an object. Otherwise, I won't create the object. I am going to use the same object only. Now check. See what happened? For all the objects, I got the same address. I got the same address. So this is the application of singleton class. Here you need to remember one thing, that is, what do you mean by singleton class? Singleton class means at a time only one object will be available over the entire program. That you can achieve through the private constructors concept. Once I made it as a private, you cannot able to create object outside. Then there is one simple solution, that is, you are going to declare one method outside inside the same class, and you are going to make it as static. And I am going to declare like this, so that everything, every object, even though I am calling how many number of times, irrespective of n number of times, object, see, in the entire program, object is created for how many times? Only one time. Only one time. That is what the definition of singleton class. Okay, fine. Yes, that comes under fourth rule. Okay, so this constructor is going to accept only access modifiers, and it doesn't support any non-access modifier. Like static keyword, final, synchronized, all these it won't support. Why it is not supporting static? Because what is the need of defining a static before one particular method name, to access this particular class, to access this particular thing through the concept of class name, but if you are going to mention before a constructor static, this CSC itself is directly calling whenever an object is created. Then is there any necessary to call again specific the class name? No need. That is the reason the static keyword doesn't support before constructor. Like this, for all these non-access modifier having various meanings. Okay, now, so these are the various kind of rules. So finally, I can say that I can conclude a constructor. How we are going to create constructor is like, for example, it's a kind of, let us assume that example. How we are going to create a constructor? Constructor name should be same as class name, and it is going to execute whenever an object is created. Meaning that we can create n number of objects, objects. If you are going to restrict a particular class for only one object, then we can call that class as singleton class. Singleton class. And the constructor won't return anything, so it doesn't support void, and it can support various kind of access modifiers, including private also. If you make it private, singleton class feature will be implemented. And it doesn't support non-access modifiers. Doesn't support non-access modifiers. Okay, these are the various kind of rules for defining a constructor. Let's see how many types of constructors are there. There are various types of constructors are there. One is default constructor. Default constructor, or we can call it as a parameterless constructor. Parameterless constructor, or we can call it as a zero argument constructor, or we can call it as a no argument constructor. Anything, any name is same. So meaning that whatever the example that we have discussed up to now, all those will come under default constructors. And another type of constructor is parameterized constructor, meaning that we are going to pass parameters. We're going to pass parameters. Let's see first one, default constructor. Default constructor. So default constructor. So when we move for default constructor means you are going to create multiple objects. You are going to create multiple objects for a class, and for all those objects you want to place same values. Same values. Then we go for a default constructor. Like for example, let's see. I will write example. Class CSC. CSC method I am making it as default. I have written like a equal to 5, b equal to 6, int a comma b. Right or not? Yes. Then class execution class, public static void main string aux. I have created an object CSC c equal to new CSC. What will happen? You created one object C. You created one object C that contains address of all, like its address is 100, whose values are 5 and 6. It will be pointed like this. Pointed like this. Now once again you are going to create one object C1 new CSC. C1 object will be created. It contains what values? Same values with an address something like 200. Now once again I have created CSC C2 equal to new CSC. I am going to create an object C2 and it contains what values? Same values with an address, let us assume the 300. This is 200 and this is 300. Am I right or not? Yes. When we go for default constructor, if you want to place same values for multiple objects, then I will go for default constructor. So simply definition is, if a constructor doesn't take any parameters, we can call it as a default constructor. We can call it as a default constructor. Okay, let's see an example. Okay, here itself I am modifying everything. Okay, or else let me take one more thing, because it is an example of singleton class, right? Control V, Control V. Okay, class yes, business class 1, function class 231. I am going to take an example where I want to create int a comma b. I am going to call a constructor bc1. I am going to place a equal to 5 or a equal to 5. b equal to 6. B equal to 6. Writing something like BC1 constructor E231 the save file. Control C, Control S, Control V dot Java. Then I need to create an object. That object is BC1 B equal to, or else B1 equal to new BC1 BC1 B2 equal to new BC1. Tell me the answer. How many times you will print the value of BC1 constructor? BC1 B3 equal to new BC1. System.out.println of A is plus A. Here itself I am writing. B is plus B. I am going to execute. Here it is going to get 3 times you will get answer, because okay, sorry, I have modified the class name, right? 231, right? Yes, you will get BC1 constructor A5 B6, BC1 constructor A5 B6, BC1 constructor A5 B6. So that is the purpose of default constructor. If you want to create, even though you are creating multiple objects, and for all those objects you want to place same value, then you will go for default constructor. Here the important thing is let me show one more thing here. Okay, I am going to place some constant values. I'm going to make it as comment. Okay, fine. Now if I am trying to call display method, why display of I'm printing once again these values only. Right, I want to call, right, once again b1 dot display b2 dot display b3 dot display. Here you will get answer. Let's see what is the answers you will get. You will get for all those answers you will get 0. A is 0, B is 0, A is 0, B is 0, A is 0, B is 0. Why you are getting all those answers? Because internally there is one more constructor. That constructor we are calling it as a system defined default constructor. Meaning that default constructors are 2 types. One is system defined default constructor, another one is a programmer defined default constructor. If the programmer didn't define any constructor in the class, then automatically the compiler will call system defined default constructor and places default values. When it is going to call system defined constructor, if the programmer doesn't return any kind of default constructor, then it will call system defined constructor and it is going to place default values. If the programmer has written any default constructor, it won't call system defined default constructor. Okay, who is the responsible for calling system defined default constructor? Compiler is responsible. Who is responsible for calling programmer defined constructor? programmer is responsible. Programmer is responsible. Guys, that is the reason in the yesterday's class. What I shown, I think F scanner, right? Or F typecasting also I have shown. Okay, or something. Some fscanner.java. Let me execute. Let me show the profile of fscanner.java. If I show the profile of fscanner.java, what happened here? Here in the previous class, I have already said it is showing something like that. In tomorrow's class, I will say, right? Yes, it is what? So it contains a method called public static void main method. In addition to that, there is one more thing. This is similar to what? Class name. Similar to class name, and with respect to like this, meaning that it is a default constructor. What default constructor? Have we written any default constructor here? No default constructor. Even though we didn't write any constructor, compiler internal it is showing that there is a constructor. That constructor is a system defined default constructor. If we write that default constructor, it will show only the same. So same Java p space e231. E231. See here now also it is showing, but here it is showing. It is showing now also here it is showing because here also you require every class having a default constructor. So what my point is here, every class will have system defined default constructor if it didn't written any programmer defined default constructor. Okay, good. Next, second one, parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. When we go for parameter constructor, if you want to create multiple objects, and if you want to place different values, then you will go for parameterized constructor. Let's see the same example. Parameter constructor means this constructor in the starting I said it may accept parameter or may not, right? If it is not accepting parameters means it is default constructor. If it is accepting parameters means it is a parameterized constructor. Class CSC constructor I have written. Okay, fine. So now it is accepting int a comma int b. It is accepting how many parameters? Two parameters. Now I'm going to create class execution class public static void main string aux. Can I create an object or not? Yes, I can create an object. CSC b equal to new CSC. CSC b equal to new CSC. Now what will happen? JVM will involve and it will call first a constructor called CSC constructor. Is there any CSC constructor is there? There is no CSC constructor, but instead there is a constructor called CSC constructor along with two parameters. Then it will produce an error. Why? I will define. If I create like this, CSC b equal to new CSC of 2, 4. What will happen? It is going to call a constructor. That constructor will accept two parameters, two integer parameters, 2, 4. Then it is going to execute this constructor. I mean, what I want to conclude here is, whenever we are going to create an object with parameterized constructor, then it is the mandatory for the programmer to define parameterized constructor in the execute in the business class. What I am saying is, whenever a parameterized constructor is created for an object, then it is mandatory for the programmer to create parameterized constructor in the business class. Otherwise, we will get an error. Otherwise, we will get an error. Similarly, one more rule is there. The reason why you are getting error. Whenever you are going to create multiple objects with both default constructor, this is what? This is a default constructor and a parameterized constructor. Then it is the mandatory for the programmer to define both default constructor as well as parameterized constructor. Otherwise, we will get a compile time error. Let's see. I remove this one. BC1. Okay. Up to here it is okay. Okay. This is what default constructor. Now if I execute, there is no problem. Sorry, it is calling scanner class. It is getting a default constructor. Now instead of that, if I pass 2, 3, this rule defines this one. Whenever you call parameterized constructor for an object, then it is mandatory for the programmer to define a parameter constructor in the execution in the business class. But what we did like default constructor. Now we will get an error. Right? What happened? Some kind of constructor BC1 class cannot be applied to given types. Required no argument. It is asking for no arguments, but we are trying to give 2 parameters. I mean, actual and formal parameter length are in different. Okay. That is the reason it is getting an error. Okay. If I pass like something like int a comma int b, then it can call parameterized constructor. It is calling parameterized constructor. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to declare once again BC1 B2 equal to new BC1 default constructor. This says rule 3. In rule 3, what we are saying, whenever we are trying to call the objects with respect to both parameters constructor as well as default constructor, then it is mandatory for the programmer to write both parameters constructor as well as default constructor in the business class. Now see, you will get an error. What happened? This one. It is required int comma int, but we are getting no arguments. So here you have to define once again. If you define like BC1 once again, this is what default Java space P231. Yes, right? Parameter constructor as well as default constructor discrete. Right? So now we can understood that this is what and this is what. This is one constructor. This is one constructor. This is parameterized constructor. And this is default constructor. Now if I pass like BC1 B3 equal to new BC1 of 5.5 what is the output you will get? You will get once again an error. Once again error, because there is no constructor which matches with that. Am I right or not? Yes. Okay, first I have to rectify this problem because there is no class related to BC1. What happened here? Constructor BC1 dot BC1 of int is not applicable, meaning that it is trying to check parameter invalid. So what I am going to do, if I pass like this 5, 5, now also will get an error because there is no such method, there is no such constructor. Now what I am going to do is, if I want to pass BC1 of int C, single parameter constructor. Now there is no error. Single parameter constructor is called. Now here I am passing 5.5. Passing 5.5. Now you will get an error because typecasting problem. Lossy conversion from double to int, right? If you are not writing anything here, it assume that double. If you write like something like f, it assume that is a float. So instead of saying that I am writing like this, now there is no problem. Parameter constructor. Parameter constructor, right? Now if you observe this all thing, what we can call the concept we are applying here is overloading concept. Overloading concept. I mean, what I can say that parameter constructor supports the concept of overloaded constructors. Overloaded constructor. What do you mean by method of overloading? Method name is same. Method name is same. But signature is different. This is the difference I have given during the concept of methods. Okay, signature and it can be like number of parameters, or order of parameters, or type of parameters, Same concept will be applicable to parameterized constructor also, but the difference is only class name should be like construct name should be similar to class name. That's it. That is what I have written. I did here, right? So this is a class name, two parameters of type int without parameters, single parameter of type float. If I write like this, BC1 of int j. Single I'm writing like int parameter, single float parameter constructor. I'm passing here instead of this, I'm passing here. Now we'll get the answer like this. See, we'll get single into parameter constructor, we'll get single into parameter constructor, we'll get the answer. Okay, so these are all about overloaded parameters constructor. Okay, so in the previous class also I said that whenever you are passing some values in the methods, I can pass normal values, or I am saying that I can pass objects also. Similarly, whenever you call a constructor, in constructor also I can pass values or I can pass objects. That is what I said, right? Here what you pass, here you pass the values. Or you can pass the objects. If this parameter constructor is accepting objects as arguments, then we can call it as object parameterized constructor. object parameterized constructor. Okay, now let's see the profile of this class. Whatever the class that we have executed, Java P space E231. Fine. See how many constructors are there. It is going to show only one constructor. That constructor can be anything. It is going to show there exists a constructor. That's it. There exists a constructor. What that constructor? Here, this E231, it contains the constructor. That constructor is a system defined default constructor, and it contains a method public static void main method. That is what it is showing. This way. Now I want to see the profile of BC1 class. Then Java P space E BC1. Then you will see. You can observe how many constructors. Like two variables are there, int a comma b, and one constructor is of type accepting two parameters, another constructing not accepting any parameters, one constructor is accepting float parameter, one constructor accepting int parameter. So this way you can use the concept of constructors. Okay.